Hello, everybody. So, good evening. Here we are. Music Making Month continues with a very special guest tonight. Very excited to have two guests. This is kind of cool. We're actually coming to you from 3 cities around the world. We're in Berlin, we're in San Francisco, we're in Stockholm, represented by Sweden, the US, and Belgium. It's a very multicultural melting pot thing we got going on tonight. But listen, before we get started, I want to go over a couple of things for anyone that's new joining us and hasn't seen any of our previous events. I just want to give some protocol. If you've got a question for us tonight that is not just chit-chat in the chat rooms, but you literally want to shoot a question our way, just put the word question, all capital letters, at the top of your chat. Just type question, then your question, and it'll help us sort of jump through all the noise and see the direct questions. And then you guys can chat amongst yourselves, and that's all great. So keep doing it. And the other thing, which has particular relevance tonight, is I've been asking you guys, since this is Music Making Month, I want you to send us your music. And I'll play it. I open up the broadcast every night with a song of yours. You saw that we did a song called Daydreaming tonight. And so here's how it works. Tweet it to us. Put it up on SoundCloud. Tweet us the link to your song. And we will check it every day. I pick one every day. And you could be on the broadcast that night. So you can either tweet it. The hashtag is MMMPropSongs. Or post it on our Facebook wall. And I want to hear your stuff. I've been hearing great stuff. So keep it coming. I'm really enjoying getting it. And anyway, onward and upward to our guests here. So I am joined by David Noel and Henrik. I'm going to try and say it the Swedish way, but I'm going to butcher it. Lenberg. It's close.
It's actually Lenberg.
Lenberg.
Oh, what's my name? I haven't been speaking Swedish so long now, so it's I'm getting the syndrome of, I'm Dolph Lundgren. I cannot speak Swedish anymore, and that's only, the Swedes know what I mean, but yeah, go ahead.
So Henrik is coming to us from San Francisco. David is coming to us from Berlin. Say hi, David.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for having us. Looking forward to the chat.
Excellent. And so we are going to see if the gods of Skype are nice to us. Look at this. This is like a real TV studio. I've got a little split screen. Very proud of the setup. So, well, listen, guys. I guess to many people out there, in fact, actually, I spoke to Henrik at a dinner earlier in the year, and I said, "Oh, where do you work?" He said, "SoundCloud." And I went, "Oh, okay." And he has a comment. He said, that's gotten a lot easier recently. The recognition factor that you used to have to say, oh, well, it's a, online sound, social media site, but now everyone's starting to recognize it. But for people who don't know, can you give us the pitch? What is SoundCloud?
Yeah, a really cool thing. We went to an event here in San Francisco yesterday called SF Music Tech, and our CTO, Eric, and one of the founders of SoundCloud, He's been on the event for 3 years in a row now, and he said that he was on a panel every time, and the first year he's like, so who here knows about SoundCloud? There were 2 people among, 200 raising their hands, and last year it was like perhaps 50%, but this year everyone raised their hand, and everyone is giving so much love now in the industry. It's really been taking off. So
it really seems to have hit critical mass.
Perhaps David can give them the breakdown of what SoundCloud is.
So yeah, SoundCloud. Historically, the history a little bit around SoundCloud is that Alex and Eric, both founders, who both had a background in music, tried to find a way. So they got really frustrated about the ways that that musicians and people working around sound had to send and receive music. So that's how the service got started. It's like having this. The focus on the track, having the waveform very prominently, a way to provide feedback in contextual moments of the track, and the ability to share it privately and publicly. And back from then, SoundCloud has turned into like a huge platform with all kinds of different sound creators. It's become a way, the easiest way and the nicest way on the web for people to upload, record, and share their sounds across many different places on the web.
I mean, this reminds me, probably, maybe it was 2 years ago, before there was this wide understanding that SoundCloud was out there. My brother called me up and he said, "What's like the YouTube for music, or what's the Flickr for sound?" And I said, "I don't know. I think YouTube's the YouTube for music. You just put up some dumb still image, and then, take the hit in quality and kind of deal with it." But you guys have solved all that.
Yeah, I think we've solved it in a really nice way, because one of the things that we were focused on really early on was really to focus on the sound file, on the audio file, and that you can still see today. So anytime you see either a widget on the web, or a Facebook player, or on SoundCloud itself, you will always see that the waveform and the focus on audio is it's just the biggest, most prominent element on the page. And if you compare it to YouTube, it's just like, yes, of course you can upload audio on YouTube as well. But what you're missing is the ability to have like real social interactions around specific moments in the sounds you create. So the focus we had back 3 years ago, it's still the same today, and it's turning, and the development that more and more people are finding SoundCloud to be of value for all kinds of sounds has proven that our bet was right.
I think it's interesting.
Add to that as well. So
yeah, go ahead.
Also, the fact that when we stay focused on sound instead of doing videos, like having that perspective also allows us to be more focused on, for instance, music creators and do integration with music apps or with companies like yourself and so on, and sort of work very specifically for those use cases. And that I think can really sort of change the world of music and sound making in a way.
The thing that first struck me when I first loaded my first SoundCloud song was coming from a music production standpoint. To see the audio waveform there really told me a lot visually about what a priority you guys were putting on the audio quality. And it's maybe something that is known, and we kind of all know what a waveform looks like, but I think by the general public, that's probably where they're going to interact with waveform editing in ways they never have before. You can see, oh, look, here's where the drop is. I want to hear the drop. Or, oh, here's where it looks like the drums kick in. I'll jump to that point. And I think it's neat. But do you know why that was, what decisions were made to actually put the audio waveform into the UI that strongly?
I mean, the waveform, of course, the founders, Alex and Eric, have a background in, post-production and music making. And of course, for anyone using music software, as long as that's been around, the waveform has been there, like as a visual representation of sound. And I guess for them, that was just a natural sort of element to bring to the web as a representation for the sound. And I think it's not just that it's the fact that it's been so strong for more of the pro apps and so on, just is another evidence that it is a really good representation of sound. And I think now that we're taking it to perhaps a broader audience, they seem to like it as well.
And I also wanted to ask you, there's a quote I thought was pretty cool by either Eric, I think it was Eric, which was, he said he felt that the web is very silent at the moment. And you guys are helping to noise it up a bit. But can you speak to that? I mean, the silence of the web in this multimedia era, we do mostly live in a silent web.
David?
Yeah. I mean, if you look at if you look at what photos have done, what Flickr has done for photos or YouTube for videos, you've seen a development that people are using it much more as a way to capture moments and to sharing them, much rather than being a professional photographer or a video editor or something like this. So we've seen two trends. It's just services that make it easy for people to capture these moments in different forms of media, and also the devices that we have and the mobile broadband, etc., as just like developed an entire new playing field for different kinds of media that can be used and transported through the web. And if we look back at video or photos or even text with Twitter and Facebook, there's just this one medium missing, which is audio. And I mean, you said it really really right, that the focus on a waveform creates this interaction or this commitment to something that is so much more visual than only a piece of sound, listening to a piece of sound. So combining the element of the visual element with the actual audio is something where we've seen a huge potential. So to go back to an example that we've recently seen, there's this dad playing songs for his a daughter on the guitar, and what he does is just putting his iPhone next to the scene and just recording that entire scene. And at the end, he takes a picture of this thing and shares it on Facebook and Twitter. So what happens is when you click the link, you see kind of an anchor, a visual anchor, which is the picture, but then you start playing the music, and you really focus on the piece of audio, because compared to a video, which could possibly be not super quality, not super edited, etc., you kind of feel committed to spending like 3, 4, 5 minutes with a video, whereas with a piece of audio, you have a visual element like the picture, and then can really focus on the track and have an interaction with the track. And that we can see in all kind of different forms of use cases. This can be, a journalist having the mobile, an Android app or the iPhone app, and recording an interview with someone, and then just archiving it privately on their SoundCloud, so they can go back and re-listen to the interview, or even like capturing moments where things happen, like in places like Egypt or the Middle East where there's a lot of stuff happening. So capturing that moment that is like highly emotional and interesting to many people, it's just something that we've seen happening a lot.
Can I add to that? I mean,
please do.
It's actually pretty strange that sound hasn't really taken off in that sense. This, in a way, YouTube of course changed how videos were not just being produced by professionals in a way, but something that millions of people can take part in, and the blogs changed how people see writing and journalism in that sense. So, and I think for the web, it seems like everyone got kind of stuck with the idea of how can we change the music business, or how can we change the services that is the web a place for music radio or for music sales and so on. And with that in mind, sort of the idea of actually sound as something that anyone can create and use in different contexts got sort of a bit forgotten there. But hopefully that's exactly what we can change.
Yeah, I agree with Henrik there. Like the one use cases I described before, you can see them now, massively emerging with mobile apps, iPhone apps, iPad, tablets, etc., where there's a shift in thinking also from music software creators that just see like there's an entire new approach to how you create music, and so you see companies like releasing an iPad app like Isotope with full of samples from the last Gorillaz albums, giving people that couldn't have or probably wouldn't have had the chance to create something suddenly turn into creators. And the fact of sharing your creation puts a certain value onto that, and that's a really exciting time right now.
We've got a bunch of questions coming in from the chat room, so I'm going to just kind of throw these at you in no particular order. The first one's just a question of metrics. A couple people are asking, how many SoundCloud users are there out there now?
So now we have, I think we just crossed 4 million users a couple of weeks ago. I think the last number I saw was somewhere around 4.3, 4.4 million users right now. So it's
Wow.
grown into a huge community of different sound creators, and it's really a super vibrant place if you observe and you drill down into the platform and the community. It's like so much stuff happening. It's really cool.
Right. And
Can I make? I have to take the chance to make sort of the analogy as well. Like we talked about the other web platforms, and like companies like you, for instance. Of course, you've had these tools, great like software around for quite long now, and of course, people had cameras before, or they have typewriters and so on. But when YouTube came around, that's suddenly when people started making a lot of movies because there was like a reason to do that, the sharing element of that, and apps like Instagram or Facebook, puts a whole new meaning to taking photos and putting them in a social context. And in the same way, I think, having something like SoundCloud, where if you create some type of sound, be it music or just recordings and so on, that's going to create a new meaning to that creativity, I think. And that's why I think we're growing so fast, because there is this, this need or sort of value we're creating by letting people interact with the sound.
it's interesting. It's like for every creative outlet, there needs to be the delivery mechanism. And that's what it sounds like you're saying, that the YouTube was the delivery mechanism for all the handy cams out there. And that this is the delivery mechanism for, any number of instruments we've had for hundreds of years to the newest computer technology.
True, but it's also, it's something else as well. Even before YouTube or before Facebook, you could sort of send a photo over the web, but it's also actually designing a service or a platform around sort of social interaction and sharing, which I think brings sort of the extended value that really makes it really interesting to both be a creator and a consumer in that sense. So,
right.
Yeah.
And for people that don't know, can you describe, SoundCloud is not just a endless repository list of one-dimensional sound files that you play. There's a lot of social interaction that goes on.
Want me to take this, Henrik?
Sure.
Okay. Yeah, if you look at, historically where we come from, it's just, a very, very engaged community of back at the time, people very involved in electronic music, also very involved in composition. So you had, very early on, you had people, writing music for, for soundtracks, game soundtracks, or, compositions for theater plays, etc. So this entire, this having people on the platform that are super engaged in what they do and are pretty much craving for the feedback from like-minded people. This could be either colleagues or people that have a certain amount of professional of skill, a certain set of skills can provide so much valuable feedback that in just a little bit of time you can really improve on your skills. So there's this one example of a guy called R.G. Chevalier, who is based out of London, and he had a copy of Logic laying around that he got for Christmas, and he never really started using it because he was like, yeah, I'm not a producer, I'm not a musician, but I kind of want to try it out, etc. And so he tried it out and fiddled around and did his first track and put it on SoundCloud. And really quickly, like in just a matter of days and weeks, people came back and provided him with feedback. So they were saying, like, in this moment of the track, I would recommend, I would suggest you do a couple of changes in that direction. And from there, it just like took off, where he built his own little sub community of people around him. Like 50 doesn't need to be a lot of people, but it can be. It's about the level of interaction that you have and engagement, right? So it can be 5, 10, 15 people that can give you like extremely valuable feedback. And from that feedback, he really like improved his skills, improved his way of writing and producing. And 9 months later, he got approached from a label to have his track released on a compilation. And then a few months after that, a record label signed him onto the label. So you can really see this lifetime of of a track moving towards something that at first sight you probably would have been like, oh, I'm not the type of person to do this, but the community is giving me a lot of a lot of stuff back.
It's interesting, David, that when you tell that story, there's a somewhat classical arc to it still, that he achieves the success and he ends up on a label.
Mm-hmm.
And that to me is almost a very 20th century finale to the story.
Yeah.
Because in a lot of ways, you guys are fulfilling the role that the label used to, of getting the music out there, letting it reach a wide audience, and building that audience in through networking and all that stuff.
Yeah. So maybe I should have followed up with. Russell and I, we've been in touch, quite regularly ever since, and for him, you could really feel in the way he tells the story, and he reaches back to us about keeping us informed about his story, was less about the fact that, so for him the success wasn't getting recognition from that label. For him the success is still being able to be active in a community and keep going and keep releasing new stuff and getting that feedback from people. So that's where he sees the actual value for him creating sounds or music. It's more about his sense of community, and he sometimes he just writes back, or he sends a tweet and goes, I fucking love SoundCloud. I mean, if it weren't for you guys, I would have never started creating music. And if you hear something like this, then it's like really where you have people like really caring about what happens and how it affects their life. That's like, it's priceless. So to reiterate your question, it's less about he wasn't measuring success on the fact that he got recognition from a record label, but he was measuring success through the level of engagement interaction he has with the group of people he works with on SoundCloud.
I see.
Can
Let me
I
just yeah, go ahead.
I think that why sort of you want to make music, for instance, and why that is fun or valuable is going to, of course, differ. For some people, it might be still about getting a label deal or standing on a big stage. But I mean, for me, for instance, I've been making music just because I love technology and like music technology. I love that part very much. I've been doing that for long, but never really had the energy or capacity or whatever to sort of finish tracks and try to go somewhere with that. But just like sharing something you create on SoundCloud, for instance, and getting some people commenting saying like, oh, I really like this beat, and getting that feeling for people are actually listening to this. I think that can be a sort of tremendous value and can actually perhaps take you further and not just leave this. You fire up Reason, you make your 16 bars of beat, and it's like, oh, this is pretty cool, but now I have to go eat dinner or whatever. Actually taking the step and putting that out there and having people say, oh, I think this is really cool, or I would want to try to work further with this. I think that can really change how people sort of can move further in the process. And the story that David was telling is a good example of that, I think.
There's I'm going to work through a little backlog here. I've got questions from people. They've got a lot of great questions coming in, and please keep them coming.
Yeah,
no, you guys, it's great. At the same time, everybody in the chat saying they're enjoying the conversation, so keep it going. But just so that they don't feel like I'm ignoring them. There was a question ages ago. Somebody asked if you guys have any plans to incorporate, I guess, server-side DSP of some sort into the platform.
Depending on what like DSP, what you mean, but for instance, if you could add an equalizer or any type of effect, I would say that we're probably not going to do that, because that is a part of sort of the audio handling that companies like you or iPhone app makers and so on are doing really well, and something that we probably shouldn't focus on. But rather than connecting these apps, I mean, there is one great example already. For instance, IK Multimedia's iRig just came out, which is a really nice field recorder for the iPhone. And if you record, you can also add vocal processing. And that is, we've been having so much fun with that lately. Just record something and turn it into a chipmunk and fool around. And that probably would be totally make no sense for people outside your own network. But sharing that with your friends is really awesome. So, but I think for the more serious music case as well, we should not be focusing on that.
Gotcha. There was another question that came in a while back, and they wanted to know if you guys have plans to create sort of lists of the most listened to artists, or I guess avenues that become promotional opportunities based on the plays or views or engagement or whatever. Any top 10 lists?
Good question.
That is also something that someone else actually, if they would want to create that service, it would be really easy to build that on top of the API. So if someone would, do the SoundCloud dubstep top list, they could create a site around that and use our API to sort of feed those tracks. For us, I think in the core sort of SoundCloud experience, it's really important to not focus too much on competition and so on, but rather try to be sort of have users have a positive and constructive dialogue. And then they can do the sort of the more I want to reach a lot of fans and so on. There are so many other services that do a great job with that. So that could be being on Facebook or that type of site, for instance.
Yeah, I agree with Henrik here, and maybe one comparison would be Spotify, where you have the service share my playlist, I think it's the name, and that's a service that has really focused on exposing interesting, a playlist via genre or the amount of plays, etc. So the really cool thing about having a platform and an open API is where you can access a certain amount of data and then just recycle that data and add value on a different level, because that's the only way we can really continue and focus on what really matters and continuing on building the best possible platform for all kinds of sound creators to share their sounds. And I mean, from a community perspective, Henrik said it right, is saying like bringing an element of competition or ranking, on a behavioral level, can sometimes create different motivation. And if you look at the service how it is today, it is really nice to have to observe this really genuine interaction going on between two people, or one person and 10 people. And I think that if you bring in a level of filtering or ranking, there's the risk of losing that. So build it on top of SoundCloud, yes, but we will probably not do it in the near future.
But this gets to something.
I see that there are a lot of people on the chat asking about that, and of course, getting fans or getting your music out there is of course an important component for music makers, and I think that it's fine. But what we try to distinguish, I guess, is like SoundCloud should rather be about engaging with other creators and finding your network, and sort of you have to be involved in that in a certain way. But then there are services like, for instance, Headliner FM, which is a great tool for taking your music and sort of run co-promotions with other artists. So if you have 1,000 followers on Facebook, you can find artists that are in the similar sort of style of music and so on, and you can then trade sort of campaigns where that artist can promote you to their fans and vice versa. And there's so many interesting new services for that type of reach more fans approach. So I would rather say that those platforms are better for that, to grow your audience.
I see. But this notion of the API interests me, because I think it's pretty common now that having an API in your social media site is pretty key to essentially recruiting a worldwide development team that's going to help spread your platform. But that means not just that the wonks out there are going to write with the API. There I would assume would be opportunities for a band to create to use the API, or an artist to use the API to actually do something promotionally. Is that true? Are there tools built in that someone who's not a true expert in programming could start building with the API?
I mean, you're completely right, and I mean that's one side of the API use where SoundCloud is about giving anyone tools to sort of tweak and share their music, for instance. And in the easy case would be to take our widget and set the color and so on and post it to your blog and get sort of a customized way of showing your sounds. But yes, and then we're trying to sort of promote more and better ways to be able to do more interesting customizations. And we're building, I don't know if you saw, we just launched something we call SoundCloud Labs, which is an area for basically where our developers try new things and concepts. And a lot of those tools would be, for instance, ways of showing a new release from an artist. So was it the last week, David? We did the Beastie Boys release. And
say it again. I had a hiccup in the audio.
Was it last week we did the Beastie Boys release, for instance?
Yeah, it's a couple of weeks ago already. But yeah, 2-3 weeks ago.
So the API is being used by major artists like Foo Fighters and Beastie Boys and everyone down to anyone who wants to have some sort of coding chops and wants to.
I realized when I asked my question, I sort of jumped to step 3. So let's jump back to step 1. There are people out there asking, what is an API?
That's a good one for Henrik.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, I'm sorry too.
I'm going to start basically posting some links as well so people can follow when we talk about sites or campaigns and so on. So an API stands for Application Programming Language. So what that is basically a way, if you are a website, for instance, like us, to let other websites or servers interact with the site. So not only users, but when machines want to interact, you set up an API, and that's basically your gate for other servers or applications to connect to your site. Does that make sense?
I think so, yeah. I mean, I think for people that aren't familiar, Facebook has an API. So through the Facebook API, you probably have used Facebook applications or seen Facebook content repackaged into other venues. That's all happening via the API, and it's sort of. Go ahead, David.
One example would be, one of the most known examples is this company Zynga building these social games on top of Facebook. So that's a pretty good example, maybe one of the biggest of how you can use a platform like Facebook and connect via an API, connect a game via the API with people, with gamers.
Right. So another question that had come in a while back was, I just wrote down the keyword, so I don't remember how it was phrased, but it was asking about an affiliate program similar to, I don't know if it's YouTube or Amazon's affiliate program, but is that something you guys have interest in incorporating?
So you mean if a user recommends SoundCloud to another user that they get something back? You mean that?
I don't know.
Okay.
Whoever asked that question, please reiterate.
Send it again.
Send it again. Oh, Third Floor Sound is saying YouTube partners. And I guess, was it you, Third Floor, that asked the original question? You can let us know.
We can say what we are going to do, so perhaps
yeah, sure.
It. I mean, for us, partnerships is about teaming up with companies that, and anyone who wants to build something and connect to the platform. So for instance, in the case of you, Propellerheads, teaming up with you would mean that we make it easy to sort of connect our products and add the layer of sound sharing. But what I think perhaps the question is about is whether we want to partner up and for instance start monetizing content and so on.
Right. I think that is because it was Ectoplasmic that actually reiterated. He says, yes, a program like YouTube Partners.
So the big difference there, and that sort of highlights an important difference between SoundCloud and YouTube, is that YouTube is, of course, an ad-driven platform. So what they do is, of course, they sell ads that when you go and watch your movies or films and clips, you see those ads, YouTube makes money, and then they share that with the content creator, which is fine. But for us, we're more in the box of the toolbox for music creators. So we're trying to keep the platform really clean and not have ads and so on, which means that instead you get a tool and you can decide if you want to make a track available for sale via some of our partners, for instance, or if you just want to share it in a nice way and skip that. So
gotcha.
That's an important difference.
I see. And so something I wanted to ask you guys about, and it's being asked a couple times in the chat as well, is that obviously there's okay, let's all understand what SoundCloud is. And then, okay, we've made the pitch. Okay, I want to have my music on SoundCloud. I'm going to use SoundCloud. But is there, as a marketing tool, is there advice you could give to bands and artists out there of ways to maximize their bang for the SoundCloud buck to use SoundCloud for its marketing potential?
Mm-hmm.
David?
Yeah, let me jump into that. I mean, the question really always comes down to, it's like, what's the goal? What is your aim? So it's really hard to just like have this one, out of the box, marketing campaign that applies to everyone. So it's really worth like thinking about like what's the aim that you want to reach, and then on the way there, SoundCloud can probably help you in many different ways. I would say that one of the most one of the ways that people use it most is to bring their sounds where they already have some sort of audience. So this can be Twitter, this can be Facebook, this can be your website, etc. So it's really about like finding like where is there interaction happening already around me as an artist, and how can I use SoundCloud to bring people what they want, which is actually like keeping them updated with recent tracks, with new albums, with singles, etc. Excuse me. And on the way there, so you can do stuff like upload your album onto SoundCloud. Use one of the premium features is that you can use the album artwork player. So you have this really nice square artwork player that you can embed on your website. So when people come onto your website, the first thing they see is the artwork of your album with a big play button. So that's where the first interaction could happen with your music. And there are other ways of on SoundCloud itself where you can interact with people or promote your music. It's like finding the right groups that have a similar genre than you have. Follow the right people on SoundCloud and get discovered. Then people start following you. Then you can go in an advanced route and saying you can privately share secret previews with the people that follow you on SoundCloud, to have some sort of sneak peek that you only to selected users. You show your demo to someone who's already shown some level of commitment of followership on SoundCloud. And then you can go the extra route of saying like looking at apps from SoundCloud Labs where you can build an album premiere or something called Social Unlock, where you can give away a track for free, but in return you get a Facebook share or a tweet. So then you have this viral mechanism that anytime someone downloads your track, they have sent a tweet or a Facebook share, so that other people can discover the same thing. So it kind of stays in your same group of friends or group of people, but you still have like this this commitment of saying like I actually want to download this track and I'm willing to giving away a tweet. So there are kind of different levels of how you can get your music out there, and you can you can find lots of these examples on a section on our site called the 101. So if you go to soundcloud.com/101, you can find a lot of these tips and tricks of how to best get the word out.
Okay. There's another question that came up from Jaguar.
Yep.
He wanted to know the SoundClouder of the day.
Yeah.
How is that chosen? I guess presumably he means, can that be me?
That is a very, very tough question. And if you go to the SoundCloud of the Day group, where we ask SoundClouders of the Day to post one of their tracks, so we have, like a nice archive of everyone. And you go to the description, you will see that we actually teamed up with the group of math wizards in Russia that live and work in a really remote. No, I'm just kidding. I mean, it's a very random thing somehow. Like we don't have like real filters or anything. So, on a community team, we bump into interesting users all the time. And one of the things that we really see is when, a user has shown some level of interaction with other people. So, for instance, someone who replies to a lot of other comments, someone who has a nice, ratio between followers and followings, etc. So generally, someone who's really active in a community and has proven, to be a really valuable member somehow. We just have a list, and then we write down a couple of users, and then we just post, someone on the team. Pick someone and then just post them. So there's really no rocket science behind that. And of course, there's like 4 million users on the site, so it's really hard to to cover everyone. But we're getting there, and who knows? Maybe it could be you next time.
Keep your eyes out for, or tell the mathematicians to keep their eyes out for Jaguar.
Yeah, they have this really secret algorithm that like calculates all these weird formula.
No, you just have to send flowers and cookies to David, and then it's okay.
Yeah, but if you're really nice to the community team, and you can probably find them really easily on SoundCloud, if you're really nice to them and send them a great message, maybe they will put you on the list. But there really is like
one thing I usually think about. People ask me, "Oh, how can I get my music out, and how can I get people to like it, and so on." In the end of the day, make more music and get better, and put your energy into that. That I think is a great strategy.
I mean, I totally agree. It's really about the level of interaction that you're seeking yourself. Like some of the best practices we've seen on SoundCloud is we live in an attention economy. So in a very like in a permission marketing environment, and that's like all buzzwords and marketing buzzwords. And what this means is, that it takes some time to build relationships with people. And if I approach them in a way that is respectful and show them that I can add value to them, then I choose to follow a user or a SoundClouder because I think I like his music, I like her songs, and they reached out with a nice message, a personalized message. That is contextual, so they refer to one of my sounds or one of my recordings. So it's really about building this relationship with a few people, and it's not about the amount, because it doesn't matter if you have 5,000 followers and nobody really interacts with you. So I'd rather have 100 highly engaged people following me and giving me like true and honest and genuine feedback that can actually help me to grow as an artist. If I get these 100 people engaged, that can sometimes be so much more valuable than a high amount of followers. So it's really worth thinking about, how can I stand out? How can I be perceived as a real person that has not necessarily the motivation of getting a play or a download or whatever it is, or a follow, but really like how can I get the person next to me to commit to a relationship that can be much more impactful in the long term.
One of the things actually that has come up this week, we're a little over a week into Music Making Month, and there's a few themes that are coming up, and one of them that comes up a lot is collaboration. And as musicians, the flattening of the earth that has happened in terms of countries and oceans are no longer keeping us from collaborating. So it's something that we're really into right now, and we seek out new collaborations with new people that we couldn't previously collaborate with. Is there ways that we can, through SoundCloud, sort of increase the scope of our collaboration or find collaborative partners?
I mean,
I think.
yeah. Go ahead, Henrik. I don't know.
Yeah, I can. I can talk some about that. I mean, one important thing, in music, people talk about collaboration a lot, and like, oh, we have the web now, so everyone should be able to collaborate. And I think there are three sort of parts to make collaboration happen. One is, of course, to find people to collaborate with, and one is to have, a technical way to actually do that somehow. And the third is also for music, which has been like a problem before, is, the idea about license and so on. So that's where Creative Commons is really good, I think. So if people can start sort of working in that direction, I think collaboration is going to start happening on a much bigger scale. And what we want to do there is, of course, not just allow the Creative Commons licensing, but also work to get towards, how can you sort of be more engaged in the network and find relevant people to exchange sound with in the end. And of course, work on the service to make it really easy to exchange the building blocks of sound. And I mean, the core case of SoundCloud is, of course, for anyone to create a loop or to record some vocals or do something like that and be able to send that to someone and give them the right to sort of reuse that and then interact and have a conversation around that. I think that's how you can sort of fuel collaboration. But the next step is also like that we're already seeing happening. For instance, I saw someone mentioning on the chat the Korg app IMS20, where you can actually not just create and share your creation, but also pass the project file so that someone, if they want, can then browse tracks, take the original project file and get that whole setup in their app and sort of continue to work on that. And that's sort of hopefully a new type of collaboration where it's not just, I know a guy in New York who I usually make beats with and send back and forth, but something where one creator can create something, send it out to a group of people, they can all sort of do their take on it and send it back to the group. And I that's also something really interesting, what can come out of these sort of structures, trying to not be so fluffy.
A quick question, just I can answer for S. Foreman is asking, what is IMS20? That's the Korg MS-20 emulation app for the iPad. So something else that's come up in the comments a few times is, and it's a simple feature, but it is something that definitely sets you guys apart, and that is the waveform comment system. And I wanted to just, if you guys could describe it to people who haven't experienced it, and then I want to talk a little bit about why that was done that way and not through a traditional comment system.
Yeah, I mean, going back to some of my initial comments, it really was like, back when SoundCloud started, Alex and Eric, the two founders, really had like since they were working, Alex was working as a sound designer and Eric was an artist himself. So what they needed to do is send and receive a lot of files and a lot of big files, and sending a new production to a client, and then going to Rapidshare and then uploading that and then having to wait 90 seconds and writing all these comments down in email, etc. So they got really frustrated about this and tried to think about what's the most frictionless and smoothest way I can send someone a piece of audio, and on top of that, how can I enable people to provide feedback as easy as possible and within context? Because one of the things that you have when you send a track via email is that you still have, to write down a timestamp and say, at minute so-and-so you need to do this and we need to change this. So you have a lot of friction in the communication around the audio file. So one of the things they said was, let's display the audio file in waveform, give a way for people to give feedback in specific moments, and have the ability to send it privately or publicly. And that's pretty much what essentially what the idea was, and still today is a big part of the service.
Two things to add to that.
Yes.
I say people asked about, can you use SoundCloud for send demos, and can you use SoundCloud for send sort of high quality audio? Yes, you can, and that's a very sort of important use case. And of course, the comments helps out to be more specific in your feedback, whatever context. And to talk a bit about the future also, it's like what we're trying to do now is sort of bring the comments to the next sort of level and get them out not just on SoundCloud.com, but sort of make the interaction happen wherever the track is shared. So look out for some cool stuff there. And also, someone on the chat mentioned that Dropbox is great for collaboration. And I totally agree, because what they have done is they have sort of brought the web one step closer to the creation process, which is, integrating with the file system, basically. But what we want to do is also take that, one step further and actually connect the apps you're in, like in the case with IMS20 that we talked about today a lot. Just imagine if you can fire up record, for instance, record something and then just share it straight out the app. And then the next day you open up the same session, you have comments on, your latest beat or your latest drum track and so on. I think that's the direction we're going, or want to be going at least.
I see.
Bring those experiences that we created on SoundCloud.com also in the apps where you actually make or consume the music.
Gotcha. I think there was an interesting comment from S. Foreman as well, actually, where he said the SoundCloud's waveform comments are generally positive, YouTube comments are generally negative. And I don't know what that. There's a psychology there at some point, but there's some truth to what he's saying. The waveform comments I see by listeners generally are just, I love this part, or killer beat, or it's such a... I don't think I've ever seen someone going like, that bass sucks, or learn to play, or first.
Yeah, I mean, YouTube people, they are haters. No, I think there's some different reasons to that. And one might be, I mean, YouTube, they have been experimenting a lot. They had ranking and thumbs up and thumbs down. And, they learned that when they had the ranking system, what's it called? Rating system, people tended to give them either, 5 stars or 1 stars. And the whole idea of people being so keen on giving actual sort of detailed feedback in that sense is not really true, I think. And that ties back to what we said before about trying to make, foster a positive spirit in the community. I think David has a lot more to say about this area.
I mean, I totally agree. It is simple. There's no way that the only thing you can do is hit play and either like it or not in your head, right? And then the only way that you can give feedback is through your play count and a time comment. So you're really going to think about, am I putting myself out there and adding a comment that is like constructive? And the fact that it's like, I think a reason that it's like within the specific part that you're putting yourself out there in something that someone has created is a much bigger leap somehow than just dropping a comment on Facebook. It's a really interesting question. I haven't really thought about it, but it's really nice to hear that, and I've seen a few comments in the chat as well, that people kind of agree with this, that they've only seen like supportive or positive criticism, I would say, and that's something we're extremely proud about, and it's not us that facilitate this. It's really how the community works and how the behavior they've decided to adopt, and that's really important. If you have that, that sense of responsibility by people that use the service and pretty much make up the community and just own the community. It's not us. We don't own the community. It's really the people themselves. And if you see constructive criticism, positive feedback, support, then it's pretty magical.
Right.
But I mean, of course, if you have 5 million people using your site, you're going to have some people that are less nice, to put it that way. And in the end, what we are doing as well is putting a lot of effort in seeing like, how can we work towards helping users to sort of, the nice users, keep a nice atmosphere and keep them out of, people spamming them and so on. So that's a very, very important sort of goal for us to try and work in that direction in keeping quality in the interactions.
Yeah, and that's these are things that we do in the background. It's a lot of work to do in the back end to think about what are the ways we can facilitate a proper interaction. So the less you see from us, basically, the better it is.
There's a question that came in from James Bernard, one of our own. And it's a good question, so I'll ask it. James wants to know, do you see a future where SoundCloud becomes another player like iTunes, where people could just use it to promote and sell their own music in a total DIY way? And my thought is it's like Spotify, it seems like what he's talking about in a way, which is something that they don't have in the States, but that iTunes-ish, cloud-based music player.
Is
that something that could happen?
There are two answers to that, I think. I mean, of course, the world of making music available, so either for purchase, or you talked about Spotify, or Rdio or Pandora or other services to sort of get music out there. These guys are doing an awesome job in building, infrastructure and applications for consuming music. And in the end, what we want to do, of course, if people want to create music and get into those channels, we want to help them do that, because that's just another outlet for reaching your fans. And putting your tracks on Facebook today could be another way to sort of reach your fans. So I think we're going to sort of connect with those networks in one or another way. And already you can do that, because if you have your tracks on SoundCloud, for instance, and want to get them into iTunes or Spotify, you can go to some of our partners, for instance, TuneCore, sign up with them, and then do basically a revenue split and get your tracks distributed into these services. The other side of the question, which is also really interesting, is, should you be able to set up your own store and sell music? And that's an area where a lot of things are happening right now. And of course, what iTunes is doing good is that they are really good to collect a lot of people and the content, and then handle the payments really well. That's what they've been successful with. But in our case now, we're seeing a bunch of new services, similar to Bandcamp, for instance, letting people now put up your music on SoundCloud and make the downloads available for sale. Those haven't really been launched yet, but happen to know that in a couple of weeks, there's going to be a few really interesting alternatives for those of you who want to actually, put your track up on your blog with the SoundCloud player and make it available for sale, basically.
Gotcha. There was a question that came in a while back. It was I guess a bit of an API question. Shiva Drums wanted to know, is it possible to use the API of YouTube, the API of SoundCloud, to create some kind of mashup where the video's coming from YouTube, the sound's coming from SoundCloud?
Of course. That has already been done. You have the link, David.
Is this Tor's hack?
I don't remember. I just remember seeing it. I mean, yes, of course, there are different ways of doing that. I think a really awesome thing from YouTube was when they did this, where they asked a lot of people to make some sort of music in a certain key and a certain tempo, and then just put this grid of videos that you could launch, and that created a really interesting sort of soundscape. I think that was a good hack. I don't know what else you could.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that hits the nail, but we just finished a weekend project, a weekend contest, together with Vimeo, and so the contest was to produce a 2-minute track for a video created by someone in the Vimeo community, as a just a background music to the video. And in the blog post, you need to go to the to our blog, blog.soundcloud.com, and find that post, because at the bottom of the post there's a link where you can actually post any YouTube video and any SoundCloud track, and hit the button, and then it creates like this, just like the visual associated with the track. It's a pretty cool hack to play around with moods and visuals. I don't know if that was the right question. But it is. It's very similar.
Gotcha. Okay. This is a question from me. The song was called Daydream. This is for Black Legend. The song at the beginning was called Daydream. Here, I'll put up the graphic for you. That's it.
Did you hear did you see the sound, what's it called there? Sounds of LA?
I didn't get this.
No, but you know, there's a mashup between like SoundCloud ambient tracks and basically the
Oh
police
yes,
radio
that's
in LA.
yeah, that's you. You are listening to Los Angeles. It's a guy who taps into the radio frequency of LA and cities like LA and New York, etc., and then just mashes it up with automatically meshes it up with ambient, like with tracks on SoundCloud tagged ambient. So you have this really, and I sometimes I just hit the page and work with this like for 1 hour, because you have this background ambient music, and then these voices from the police frequency in New York. It's really, really cool.
Wow.
It's called You Are Listening to losangeles.com, I think it is.
Very cool.
You should check it out.
Pimp Player.
Did you allow us to post links now, by the way? I've been sitting here wanting to post the
Oh, I haven't activated, but there's a way you can write them if you just don't smush it together like a link, but put spaces in between it and type dot instead of period, You can do it that way. After this session, I'll log into the settings and see if I can enable it. Pimp Player asks, do either of you guys make music?
I used to. I used to play the piano when I was little, and I used to play in a hardcore band, punk rock hardcore band. But that's a long time ago.
Gotcha.
And today I would just play a little guitar.
And Henrik?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've been more of a technologist than like a sound engineer before I went to school back in the day, and always been trying out music technology and so on. So, but never really seriously in that sense. So I didn't release any music. And nowadays, working in this space, you get really excited and sort of inspired to do a lot of music. But unfortunately, there's less time for that.
A lot to be done. Well, listen, guys, I don't want to hold you here all night. You've given us a wonderful hour of your time. So on behalf of everyone, I just want to thank you for just letting us fire our random questions at you and giving us some really interesting insight.
1 minute final word, sorry.
Yeah, you want to make a closing statement? Not guilty, Your Honor.
I mean, one of the things I just have to do a shameless plug, because I mean, there's so many awesome people in your community. I know that, and SoundCloud is looking to hire a lot of awesome people. So if anyone is, a developer or interested in working in other roles, we have a ton of positions up for both our Berlin office and also our San Francisco office. So check out the jobs page. It's on soundcloud.com/jobs. That's a marketing for you.
All right. Closing statement, David?
Yeah, I mean, thanks for everyone who joined the chat. It was a really lively discussion here on the chat, like boom, 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 boom. And thanks to you, Ryan, for having us. It was really cool.
Of course. Yeah. Well, listen.
I'm going to post on the chat if anyone wants to get in contact or, so on. I'm posting David's and my Twitter handles there.
Yeah, of course. I mean, if anyone wants to ask a question, keep going at SoundCloud or at David at Lemberg, and we're on Twitter.
Cool.
Nice.
All right, guys.
Well, thanks everyone. Thanks for using SoundCloud.
Cool. All right. You guys take care.
You too. Bye-bye.
So, that's it for us tonight. So, just to remind you guys, please do send us your music, because we want to play it like this. If you put it up on SoundCloud, if you tweet us a link to it at #MMMPropSongs, post it on our Facebook wall. We scan them every day. I pick one out, and not quite at random. I pick one I like, and we will put it up. We'll open the broadcast with it. So Facebook page, Twitter, SoundCloud, put them all together, get us your music, and this would be you tomorrow night.